everyone. Welcome to another episode of Growing Together with Don Kinzler, lifelong gardener, and the North Dakota State University Horticulturist Extension Office.
It's great to be at your home today.
Well, it's great. We've talked about this before, that we went to Don's home recently. We're here at my house in Moorhead today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the garden, what we've done. Me and my girlfriend Sam, we've been here for about 6 years now, and we've put a lot of changes into the yard, and so let's take a look around.
Yeah, and one of the things that us gardeners always enjoy doing is seeing what somebody else is doing, because we always get ideas from somebody else.
It is fun to go over. Recently, my neighbor was part of the quilts and garden tour, and it was really fun to go into her backyard and then to go to some of the other quilters' yards and see what they were doing.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see what all we've got.
Yeah, well, we'll stay here, where we start here, rather. And I should say, when we started here, just in front of us was a big crabapple tree, and it provided great shade, but it was leaning a little bit too much. It wasn't really healthy. So we decided we would have to take that out. So we had a beautiful shade garden here. Took that out, and within 2 weeks we realized, well, we no longer have a shade garden. Everything's got to go. We were able to save a couple of the hostas, but the fun thing about this is that it really allowed us to go in and do some different things. And one of the big things we always wanted to do was hanging baskets in front here. These are two sections of hanging baskets. The sweet potato vine is a great trailer, and the petunias, the super petunias, is just a great pop of color coming through. We always like that. We try different things, and I think we're pretty well settled that there's some mixture of this, of super petunias and sweet potato vines, is really going to be where we stay.
Yeah, and I noticed you're using the coconut fiber liners.
Yeah.
Aren't those great for hanging baskets
They
now?
are nice.
And for planters and window boxes?
Yeah, and then you can just kind of pull them up at the end of the year. You can dump out the dirt, or if you want to keep the soil in there, you can. We actually keep them up through Christmas. Sometimes we'll put lights in there, maybe some pine cones or something like that.
Yeah, and if anything ever happens to them, if they eventually wear out, but they last quite a few years, you can always just get another one, as opposed to like a wooden window box that eventually you might have to rebuild.
Yeah, and a wooden window box, I would worried here about a lot of they're just kind of rot, and it'd be getting too much of the elements here.
Yeah, I like the way that the sweet potato vine cascades over, plus the petunias. That's a good look.
Yeah, they're really living up to the trailer name with that, and the petunias just kind of pop out. You can imagine what the petunias would be like if there were no sweet potato vines. Sweet potato vines almost kind of suppress everything a little bit.
Yeah, they do, and I'm sure you're probably similar. Once you hit a formula that you like of plants and color, it's hard to change from that, because when you've got a winning formula that you like, I do the same thing. I kind of stick to the things that have done so well for a person.
So Sam's kind of had the vision for this area, and she wanted to do something like a cottage garden. So among the other things, the alliums here, and these are starting to come in right now. In a couple of weeks, these will really be popping, really beautiful. Love the long stems on those and the flowers on top. Of course, like I was saying, we were able to keep a couple of the hostas that did okay in the summer. We've got a daylily here. We've got the daisy. What's the daisy's name? Becky?
Yes, Becky, the Shasta type daisy, Becky with the great big large blossoms.
Yep, just recently planted, so that'll be a while. We moved the grasses, the Carl Forsters in the back. We kind of move those around a little bit.
Well, you've done a good job of transitioning from total shade to all of a sudden you have sun. Because this is a beautiful area.
Yeah, and so like the Veronicas are really nice. They do well. The peony is relatively new, and false indigo was this not Artemisia is
Amorpha, maybe false indigo.
Yeah, false indigo. Yep,
sure.
And this was a fun one we just picked up the other day. We just noticed it was called an obedient plant, and I like the variegated leaves and the name of an obedient plant. Our dog is kind of popping her head through the window now, so we joke that this will be the only obedient thing in our yard.
And you've got a nice difference of textures. Color shades. The iris with its spear-shaped leaves against the flatter hosta leaves, and so you've got interest going on here.
Yeah, and some of this stuff we had to recently move around and kind of fill in. The other thing gardeners like to do is you like a plant, but maybe it needs to go in a different space and kind of create more area between it. So the iris, I think, will even be more upright next year, hopefully.
You hit on a key point too with perennial gardens. Don't you find too that you can adjust them as need be, And so they're always works in progress, aren't they? There's digging, dividing, moving to find the exact combination.
And we've talked about it before, but over there, that's our with the not the red flame.
Burning bush.
Burning bush.
Yeah, you want burning bush.
Burning bush. That was the one that was kind of gnawed down by the rabbits over this winter before we got our cage around it. Caged it up and been taking good care of it. And now
those are rabbit candy, and they are so beautiful. And like you mentioned, the flaming in the fall of the year, they have that flaming red color.
Yeah, and we just planted a new hydrangea over there.
Oh, now a beautiful hydrangea. Now I love that because it's the paniculata type of hydrangea, named after the panicles, the pyramidal-shaped flower clusters, and those are so well adapted. And you've got it in a good sunny location because they like a little more sun than some of the shade-loving hydrangeas.
Yeah, and this will get sun. It'll get a little bit dappled in the late afternoon.
The size of those blossoms are beautiful,
Already,
so it's happy there. Even for a younger
nice.
plant, it's happy.
Yeah, and from what I understand, that those stems are a bit sturdier than the old floppy mop heads that would kind of bend over. And so this we're hoping that this remains kind of upright. So that'll be really nice.
It looks happy.
Get 3 months of local news for just 99 cents a month. You'll get unlimited access to the news you need to stay engaged and connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe now to get 3 months of local news for only 99 cents a month.
Well, over here on the other side of the walkway, we've got this big pine tree here, obviously, and as we've talked about before on the show, pine trees are interesting. It's kind of hard to get something to grow under them. You said because the roots are actually so close to the surface that you can't really dig much down.
Right, usually under evergreen trees can be a challenge because, the roots are fairly shallow and they sap all the moisture and nutrients out of whatever you're trying to grow. So grass doesn't always do well. But I like what you've done here.
With this was one area, obviously we still had a lot of shade, and we were able to take some of the hostas that we had over here that were getting burned after we cut down that tree and put them over here, and really after a couple of years now, 3 years, they've really taken off, and I think that they're looking really, really good.
They are healthy, and your sidewalk kind of curves along, and so the hostas kind of follow a natural curve, and they are happy. Look at the size of those leaves on that kind of bluish green toned hosta, and so a good use of a space that would otherwise be kind of shaded and no color and no pizzazz, and this really worked well.
Well, and we're trying a bleeding heart there back in the back corner, if you can kind of see off to the side of the hostas, see how that does, and see if that gives a little bit of pop, but also it'll give some height, a different texture in there too. So
a good example of what people can do under evergreens, either whether they be spruce or pines, and I'm sure in this area here you're able to keep it well watered, because that's sometimes a challenge under an evergreen to keep them watered, and you've obviously done a good job.
I got to tell you a funny story about hostas. In our front yard up on the berm of the street, there's 2 big hostas out there that we've not even touched, but they keep growing. They're in full sun, they're doing great. And we always wondered why they were there. We found out from the previous homeowner that she had planted them there because her husband kept hitting the water main pipe with the lawnmower. So she planted those as a way to kind of divert him from going over that area. So we're going to keep them there for now.
Because it's much less likely to mow over a hosta than
you don't
to
want
hit
to mow
water,
over a hosta.
the water pipe.
Should we take a look in back?
Yeah, let's do that.
So down here we're in our backyard. Mostly we plant, it's plants back here, plants and flowers. But here in this area where it gets a fair amount of sun still, we're trying some vegetables, and we have 2 raised beds. We have this kind of a old stock tank, and then we've got a raised bed that we ordered online. And we've got the peppers are doing well, and some of the tomatoes are doing well, but some of the tomatoes are not doing as well. And I'm always kind of nervous when it comes to watering something like that. I'm afraid I'm going to overwater because we've had blossom end rot, and I wonder now if I'm not watering it enough.
Well, generally the whole thing looks nice. This looks awesome. Look at the lettuce.
Yeah.
And the is that a kale type?
Yep, we got kales there.
And look at the peppers. So generally this looks awesome. I love the stock tank. That is a great spot to grow vegetables. And everything looks so healthy.
Yeah.
The tomatoes, look at the size of some of the tomatoes on those. Now on one of the tomatoes there are two. There are some yellowing on there. It feels like you've got your moisture good under control. We kind of felt the soil. That's a good way to kind of do. But a little bit of yellowing is probably them calling for more nutrition.
Okay.
Because in a pot or other container, they're totally dependent on us for their nutrition.
Okay.
And so maybe fertilizing even once a week with a water-soluble type, I think will help green those leaves up.
Yeah, that's great to know.
And that will also help with the size of tomatoes. But like I say, this looks great.
Yeah, it is. We're really happy with it. Things are really, I mean, this is the time of year with all the heat, things are coming in gangbusters. We just want to make sure we can kind of hold on to everything, too.
And, you've taken a corner of the yard here, corner of the fence that would otherwise be kind of an unused space, and you've turned it into a vegetable garden.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice, too, because when the dogs are out here, they don't have to be back here, so it's an area where you don't have to keep an eye on them. So
when I see the size of those tomato fruits, I'm getting hungry for a ripe tomato.
We're in that.
It's going to be fun.
It's BLT season right around.
And you got some herbs, it looks like, around the foundation of the stock tank here.
Yep, and it's a good place to grow that. We've kind of graded it a little bit so that they won't be sitting in water. It's really nice.
And you've also got it situated in a spot that gets good light.
Yep.
Looks like the opposite corner of the fence probably wouldn't have gotten as good, so the location is great because most of our vegetables want full sun. This looks like a good spot.
If you're loving this podcast, be sure to check out our full lineup. From news and local politics to sports and true crime, find your next great listen right now at inforum.com/podcasts. That's inforum.com/podcasts.
So here we're on the south side of the backyard, and one of the first things we did, when we got the house, shortly after that we got a dog, so we had to put up a fence. One of the things we didn't realize about putting up the fence is immediately it's going to add some shade. So while this area got pretty good afternoon sun before, the shade came in with the fence, so we had to kind of figure out what we wanted to plant. So we've been enjoying kind of using a lot of different things. Again, hostas, bleeding hearts, astilbes, ferns. It's been really nice. But one thing we realized is that, you get to spring and you're so excited to get out in your yard and you see a couple things pop up and you just think like, oh, there's too much space between. So we plopped in a couple things in between. Well, we've really crowded a little too much in here now.
Well, the plants always look so cute when they're small.
They do. Yeah, it's hard to visualize.
We've all done that one. I really like the way that you've designed this in the shaded area at the base of the fence. Because I'm noticing the different colors and textures. The bright kind of yellowish green of one of the types of hosta versus the two-tone green and white of another type of hosta. And you've got bleeding heart, which has kind of a fernier texture to it. And do you recall the name of that large leaf green and silver?
This one?
Yeah. Brunera.
Brunera.
Yep.
I always
pronounced
Brunera.
both ways. That is pretty.
Yeah.
The size of the leaves almost gives a tropical look to the assortment.
It's even a different texture. It's like more of a sandpaper texture. So it's really kind of nice to have something in there. But yeah, I mean, when you look out and you can see mostly a certain type of green and you see these pops of silver in there.
See, and that's what adds such interest to a flower bed. And then also the flatter, broad leaves of the hosta, then you have an iris with its spear-shaped leaves coming up out of that. Another thing, John, I noticed at the base, of course, of the fence where it's shaded, you've got shade-loving things. But higher up on the fence where it gets sun, you've got hanging baskets, and it looks like types that like sun.
Yeah, and that was one thing that we realized is that, with the way the shade is, at the top of the area, there would still be a fair amount of space for light. So we got these hanging baskets, we've got these arms, and it's just been really great because there again, you walk back here and you look to this area and you've got green mostly on the ground, but then you've got these pops of color above, and it helps, as they say, draw the eye up. But it's really nice because it also adds they're annuals, so you can play with them different from year to year. You can always change them up and do different things.
Yeah, and so you've elevated the growing space just through the use of the arms and hang baskets on the fence. So
yeah,
good use of a fence to kind of elevate the whole landscape like that.
Well, and like we said, we noticed that the shade comes down, to an area cast down by the fence. But then now we're thinking like, well, maybe we could bump out certain areas that could come out into the yard a little bit more and plant something that's a little bit sunnier that, would be a little low. We don't want to grow up in front of these things, but just have some, again, more pops of color on the ground to kind of bounce back up to the...
Right, so that's a good observation of exactly how the light, the shade, the sunlight falls like next to a fence or other building too. Because even like in this, you might think north side of the fence, all shade. But like you've observed that the sun does angle in at a certain point. So you've got a good combination here. Beautiful space. I bet you really enjoy this backyard.
I do. I really do. And that was kind of we were among the people we started before 2020. But in 2020, we thought, look, we're spending a lot of time at home. Let's make this a place where we really enjoy being. I'm going to show you a little area we're setting up. It will be kind of our little sitting area in a couple minutes here. But yeah, it's nice to be back here. And it's
and there's the old saying, good fences make good neighbors. And I'm sure neighbors are beautiful people. But fences do give a sense of privacy to all of us. And they create and define a space so nicely too.
Yep.
It's fun, John, as we were walking through to your backyard here, we passed under these beautiful, awesome arbor vitae. Now, arbor vitae is a wonderful evergreen. Normally, you don't see them this big. These are fairly old arbor vitae, and it's awesome to be able to walk under them. Now, the type that we're walking under is called Techni arbor vitae. Techni arbor vitae, in time, creates a big teardrop shape. And of course, then the bottoms open up a little bit in time, and this has allowed us to walk under the shade of these. Right now, it's got to be 10 degrees cooler under there.
On a hot day, isn't it nicer just to stand right over here?
Yeah, so they've given you shade as you pass down through the sidewalk that kind of runs below. It's giving good screening.
It's good for houses that are built relatively close together. Again, this offers a little bit of privacy and a little, just even that sense of a barrier and that sense of just a distance. So it's really been nice to have these here.
I bet it has. And I see two different types of arborvitae here. I mentioned the one called Techni, which becomes a great big teardrop shape in time. And right beside it are the strict pyramidal, which are more of a columnar one, which is kind of right out here. When a person views it from the outside, it's more of a tight pyramidal going all the way up, not such a broad spreading. But I love the way that these Technis, and these must be 40 years old. I'm guessing.
Yeah, we've been in the house for 60 years. The people before us for 6 years, and then the people before us, I think, had been here for about 20 years. So I could reach back and ask them, but
if they were here when you bought them. These are old, nice, beautiful, tall, big enough so we can walk under. And so anyone familiar with the evergreen arborvitae, you think, gosh, you guys walked under arborvitae? Well, and
I'll tell you the other thing that no one will probably ever use it as a selling point, or maybe they will. Great for birds. This is my office, or this is our office right here, set off right by the arborvitae, 2 big windows looking out, and especially cardinals love being up in there. There's a cardinal nest somewhere up there. You can kind of see it straight up. And so there will be birds in here. I'll put on the window bird feeder, put food in there, so birds will be coming in all the time. But then when the cardinals come in, it thrills me. It's just particularly great to have those come by.
And that's one advantage of being in a more developed, older part of town. Your house is, any idea how old this
it's
property?
103 years now.
103 years old. Yep. Wow. So you see, that's one advantage of an older established property. You have some of these things. Like I say, these arborvitaes are old. This is one of the few times I've ever walked under the shade of an arborvitae.
Oh, it is really pretty nice. And for our area here, this is right off the back deck. So again, you have this privacy, you have the kind of the cooling effect of it. It's really very nice.
Yeah, it's just, you can feel the coolness under this. It's awesome, and it's a hot day.
Yeah. I'm gonna go over and look at the clover.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll just keep rolling.
Okay.
Now, John, as we walk along here, I see newly little sprouts in an area of lawn, a small lawn area. Tell us about this.
Yeah, this area it's been in kind of development for a while, or we've been kind of wondering what to do with it. When we moved in, there were big rose bushes here, and we just didn't think that we had the patience to work with the rose bushes. They would also kind of fall into the walkway a little bit. We would find ourselves getting caught up in them. So we decided to take those out, and then, what are we going to put in here? And at first we were thinking of a big patio, but now I'm kind of glad we didn't do that, because on a hot day like this, that's so much extra heat. What we decided to do is put in some clover. And this is a bee lawn clover. I think this mix comes from the University of Minnesota, and so it'll be a mix of some grasses, but different kinds of clover. I planted it about 2 weeks ago, and as you can see, there's green sprouts coming in. I had it covered in burlap, and I took that off just for having people over, just to kind of show what we were doing here. And then we put in these kind of stepping stone, basically, and those will be the footsteps for where we put our big lounge chairs. So by the time Sam comes home from work at about 4:30 or 5, this area will start being in shade. So this is an area where we can sit and kind of cool down.
Sure, in late afternoon, evening.
Late afternoon,
yeah, this will
early
be in
evening,
shade.
And we'll put in another couple of rocks here. We've got a fire pit that we'll put in, and this will be nice because then we can sit here, we can look at that corner of the yard, can keep an eye on the back door and see if the dogs need to come out or come in. But yeah, the clover, we're really looking forward to seeing like what this does, over the course of, what it'll be, how long it'll take to get firmly or totally kind of entrenched and
yeah, so this is going to be a nice corner. It's a triangle in shape, bordered on one side by your sidewalk. The rear corners are the corners of a fence. And so we've got plantings around the outside. I suppose, what is it across? It's at maybe 20,
about 20 feet.
20 feet or so,
Yep.
and maybe 20 feet in depth. And so this is going to be fun. This is going to be a nice triangle for a bee lawn. And of course, in the bee lawn, there's usually clover, a white Dutch clover, and I think usually some creeping thyme, and one called self-heal, which is another little blooming, and then maybe a shade-tolerant grass. So this is going to be a really nice, and usually then you don't need to mow or rarely need to mow. It's going to attract nice little pollinator bees and everything. And of course, the nice thing about pollinator bees, they mind their own business. So
Yeah.
you guys will be able to sit here. The little pollinators will be working on the clover, and this is going to be nice. I can envision the way you've got this planned.
And we've got a neighbor about 4 houses down who actually has her own bees. She's got beehives, and so I haven't seen her bees over here yet, but we're hoping that this helps them in the area. There's a lot of other nice gardens in the neighborhood, so hopefully that'll help that, because then we get free honey. Our neighbor gives us free honey,
Oh,
which
nice.
is very, very nice.
That's awesome.
And then behind that, we've got a couple big planters that I've picked up this year. I'm going to give away a secret here. If you go to yard sales or estate sales, look for planters. You can usually find them half or even a fraction of the price. And we filled those up with, we were talking to John Wheeler earlier, but hostas and begonias have been really, really nice.
Yep, and the coleus. And
coleus, not hostas.
Sure.
Right.
I like the way that you've got 3 of them in a grouping there, 3 or is it 4? But each is at different height.
Yep.
And the tallest one is, gosh, that must be 3 feet in height. But 3 different heights create a staggered effect, so it makes a little miniature landscape all its own. John, I noticed against the garage wall you've got some vines. Tell us about those. They have a good look on that.
Yeah, we've talked about clematis before on the show. That's something that we've found, again, really does well in some shade area, get some good morning sun. As you said, what are they? They like to keep their feet cool and their heads hot.
That's right, yeah. Face in the sun, feet in the shade.
Yeah, and so we've planted a couple, and we've built this kind of makeshift trellis system there. But and we've run fishing line in between there, so to give them a little bit more area to go up on other sides. The one on the far left is more established, obviously, so it's really taken off. The other ones are coming along just fine. But in the meantime, we've put in purple hyacinth beans, and those are just great climbers, and they offer a little bit of color too. So those have been really fun.
You know, that's a great idea because the clematis, as we discussed in a previous podcast, clematis takes some time to develop, 3 years or so till it really fills out a trellis. But in the meantime, I like the way you've used the hyacinth bean, which is an annual, to give you color in the meantime while you're waiting for the clematis.
Yep, and then we harvest the beans, keep them inside in the winter, then go ahead and plant them in the spring. And
I like the trellis, a wooden trellis. That's artistic, the way that you've got it configured.
Yeah, it's been kind of a fun thing, and I think we may try to even add on to it a little bit and see if they'll even grow up even higher.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, now, personal question. What is that? You've got a tool or a hook. What is that next to the wooden trellis?
For some reason, there was a couple of spearfishing forks, I think, that were left here by the previous owner. I think they just had them as
spearfishing.
I think so.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking, well, let's see, could I dig potatoes with that? Or I was looking for a gardening. I was in the totally the different line of work.
Yeah, there was that, and then there was another pitchfork head that was kind of sticking out of a garden. We pulled that one out. We thought maybe that was with my luck with things that could be kind of dangerous. So Don, we always like to talk about your favorite gardening tool. I know you showed us yours, which was a hoe. This is one of ours. This is a Japanese gardening tool. It's a kind of a Japanese blade. And what it is, it kind of looks like a scythe, right?
It does. This is on my wish list. One just like this.
Do yourself
a
favor.
So it's, maybe 18 inches long, maybe?
Yeah, wood handle.
So a wonderful handheld.
And a little iron blade.
But blade comes off at kind of an L shape from the wooden handle.
Yep, and then you could put it straight down, point into the ground, and you could dig a little trench, or you can kind of skim it along the top and take out some of those lighter weeds that don't get as entrenched deep in.
You know, this is going to replace the butcher knife and table knife. This is much better because now it's a precision weeding tool, so you could go alongside a row of carrots or other vegetables and get those weeds right next without disturbing the vegetable row.
Yeah.
Definitely on my wish list.
Well, Donna, I want to thank you a lot for coming by and taking a look at our yard.
Well, it's been my pleasure because I always learn things new. Come to day lost, you don't learn something new, and I've learned new things. Well, I know what a fishing for a spear is now, but more importantly than that, I've got some good ideas on how to combine different plants now. Some of the plants, I hadn't seen those combinations. So now some of the different color combinations and texture combinations, so I've got some own ideas. So don't be surprised if you see some of the things repeated in our own yard.
Well, that's going to do it for another episode of Growing Together. Don, if people have questions for you, what's the best way to reach you?
Feel free to email me, donald.kinzler, Kinzler, at ndsu.edu.
Well, thanks again for coming by.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and thank you for having us, and have a good week, everyone.